Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. We're learning Kesubos Daf Nun Beis, number 52. An amazing shir for you today. We're going to be talking about a couple of different topics, but more about the Kesubos B'nin Dichron. If you don't understand what it is today, we'll explain it a little better. We'll talk a little bit about the chiyuv that our husband has to pay for his wife's medical bills. There's a difference between a chronic condition and a temporary condition, and that will be the subject that Ben Sion to explain that further. Without further ado, I introduce you to the one, the only Ben Sion Lang. All right, let's get started. The bottom of Nun Aleph and Beis 51b. The last line. Amar Abaye, Alman l'Kohen Gadol l'chayav l'fdosa. Let's say you're legally married, you're a Kohen Gadol, you're legally married at Almana. You're not allowed to marry, you're chayav l'fdosa. Technically, you're supposed to get divorced, but you were married. Kedushin is Tobstin. We don't possibly go to Rabbi Akiva. You're technically married, and then she gets taken captive. You have to ransom her. Shani Korba of a Kohenes Ahadrinach Lemdiyasach. Abai says, it says in the Ksuba, Kohenes, I'll redeem you and return you to your Medina, not to a marriage, because a Kohen, if she gets captured, we assume she's a Shvuya, she's also to her husband. Top of the basement olive, Mamzeres and Sina Israel. However, Israel marries someone he's not allowed to marry, like a Mamzeres, or Nesina, Eno Chayav Lifdosa. And then, while they're married illegally, she gets taken captive. He doesn't have to ransom her. Shanani Korbabo, Sminach into the Tanai Ksuva, they has to redeem his wife. It says, I'll return you to my wife. You can't legally get married. You're not supposed to be married, so therefore there's no Chayav to be put. Rava argues on Abai. Kol Sheisher Shvuya Gorim la chayav lifdosa isur davar achar la eno chayav lifdosa. If it's just she was taken captive, right, and she's usher, right, she's usher to a Kohen at least, then you have to redeem her. But if there's any reason that they shouldn't be married, then you're not chayav lifdosa. So even Alman Kohen Gadol, he argues. Rava says, if you're illegally married, you would not be responsible to be put her if she's taken captive. I say the machlokas Abai and Rava is the same as the machlokas Tanaim. A mother as ishto. V'nishpis. You will learn in Mesachas and Darim. You could ask her your wife. You can ask her to get benefit from you. V'nishpis. And she gets taken captive. Right? Now, again, you can't. Yisrael, it says in the Kesuba, right? I'm going to return you to be my wife. She can't be your wife because you can't be with her. You can't have relations with her. So what would be the halacha in that case? It says you have to redeem her and you give her a ksuba. You can just give her the ksuba. Let's say it's $10,000 a ksuba. Take your ksuba. You put it yourself. They want $1 million, the ransomers. Amr of Nasan Sha'alti Asumklas. Nasan says, I asked Sumklas. Shamar Rishua Nasan La Ksubasa. He says you don't have to actually ransom her. Was only talking about a case where first he asked her, and then he didn't know, and then she became taken captive. Or even in a case where she was taken captive, and then while she was captive, he took a neder not to get benefit from her. Amar li lo shamati. I didn't hear. It must be only talking about a case where he took the neder first, and then she was taken captive. The Amars nishbis himself hidira asi that room. If the same halacha applied, if she's taken captive first, then people are going to go and mother their wife. They don't want to pay for a tremendous ransom, so they'll just answer her behana, and therefore they'll give her the ksuba and free her, and be free from ransoming her. My love, mother, Ashes Kohen come up with you. Aren't Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shul arguing about an Ashes Kohen, right? Now, Abai Damar Kerbalazer. I mean, they're also arguing Ashes Kohen, not just Ashes Israel. Abai Damar Kerbalazer. Abai says like Rabbi Lezer. Lezer says that you have to redeem her. You still have to redeem her. And therefore Abai says, by a Manal Kohen Gadol, even though technically you can't remain married, but it's still, the technical words of the Ksuva remain true. I can bring you back to be free from your captives to your father's house, to your country, where you're from. So therefore, even though they can't remain married, it doesn't make a difference. Abai Damar Rabbi says, no, it doesn't make a difference. Even though technically I can return for you, there's still an Isser Nether over here, so therefore I don't have to redeem you. I give you a ksuba, not redeem you. And where it says lo, don't say it's malchus tana. This Bryce is talking about a different case, not where he asks her with a neder. She takes a neder. She doesn't want to be muteris to him. He's Mekayim the neder. He has 24 hours to annul the neder. He decides not to annul it. Lezer Savar, who knows, and that's what mentioned now. It's his fault, Lezer says. He puts his finger, Bain Shein out. Literally, this means he puts his finger between her teeth. You can't expect her to not bite his finger. I'm debating whether I should say what I think the explanation of these words are here. Because I'm not sure to say it fully, I'm just going to hint at what I think the real pshat is. This machlokas is mentioned elsewhere in Shas Hunosin. Etzba is not a finger. Etzba is a different organ of the man. Bein Shineha is not her teeth. It's a different organ of the woman. Who is responsible to pleasure his wife the way a woman wants to be pleasured? Lezer holds it's his obligation. Yeshua Savar, he knows not it's her responsibility. He can help out, but it's her responsibility. So the question is, whose responsibility is to pleasure the wife, the hana between them, right? That she's answering herself to get hana from this man. And whose responsibility does that fall on? Is it on the man or is it on the woman? Lezer says it's the man, so therefore it's his responsibility. So therefore he has to redeem her no matter what, even though she made the neder. Yeshua says, no, it's the lady's obligation. He could help her have an orgasm. Oh, no, I said it. All right. He could help her have an orgasm, but it's really her responsibility, so therefore it's her fault when she takes the neder. He not to mention that. Whereas if it's her responsibility, Kesubos, Kesuba Mayavit, why is Yeshua says she even gets a Kesuba? She took the neder. The continuation of the Bryce was Shali Sumchas. I asked Sumchas, Shamar Bishua Nasin La Kesubos Veina Podek Shedir Self Nishbis of Nishbish Lazavidir. What cases is he talking about? Where the neder comes first, or taking captive comes first? Ramur Lo Shamati. I didn't hear. Be the Nadra E. If the case that they're talking on is Bryce's, where she took the neder, Mali Hidir Self Nishbis, Mali Nishbis Self Hidira. Doesn't make a difference in that case, right? She's the one who started it. Really, the Bryce is talking about their standard case where the man dismisses his wife from getting hana from him. Abaye mataris l'taime. Abaye explains it according to his reasoning. Rav mataris l'taime, meaning we're going to say Abaye and Rav are going to say both Tanaim can agree with me. Abaye mataris l'taime. Almano kohen gadol kuli amalo plugid chayil dosa. If he's illegally married, he's a kohen gadol. He's married to Almana, he has to be po to her. Even both Rabbi Shor and Lezer, you don't have to redeem her. Mother Isha's Kohen, now if it's Isha's Kohen, he takes a neder, everyone agrees, like an Alman Kohen Gadol, he has to redeem her. The Hain Alman Kohen Gadol, it's the exact same case. Completely, Mother Isha's Israel. When he's not a Kohen, he's Israel, and he asks his wife to get enough from him. Lezer says, Azel Basar Mikara. Lezer says, you go after the original stipulation. When they got married, they technically were allowed to be married. Right, and he had a chiyuv to redeem her, to bring her back to his wife. Rabbi Shua, Azil Basar, and now it can't be fulfilled anymore, Rabbi Lezer says. Even though now it can't be fulfilled, but originally he was mechayiv himself to bring her back to his wife. Now there's a neder, they can't remain married, it doesn't make a difference. To go Basar Mikara, Alman L'Kohen Gadol, right, or Mamzeres, when he married a Yisrael, married a Mamzeres, right, the Kesuba really never took effect because it was never a time where he could redeem her and bring her back to his wife. Rather, it says, as long as when you got married, it was a possibility. Now that it's not a possibility, it doesn't make a difference. Rabbi Shua, Azil, Basar B'Sof. You go after now, and now he can't bring her back to being his wife. Rav Madar Tzadame, Rav says both Tanaim could agree with me. Like I said before, no obligation to devote her. Completely mother bein Eishes Kohen or bein Eishes Israel. By a neder, his mother, whether he's a Kohen or Israel, wouldn't make a difference. You go after the original stipulation. At the time of marriage, technically it was possible to redeem her and bring her back to his wife, or for a Kohen to bring her back to Medina. Yeshua says he's going after the sof, and the sof is that now he can't bring her back. And Yeshua Kohen also, right? Technically, right, just like by Amal Kangar Mazar Israel, right? there's no, you're not allowed to stay married. It's the same thing over here. My mother, you're not allowed to stay married, so it wouldn't apply to anybody. Nishbis chayav livdosa. Tell me about nishbis b'chayav ba'ala. Let's say she became taken captive while her husband lived. Achach meis ba'ala, and then before he got a chance to ransom her, he died. Hikir ba'ala. If the husband knew during his lifetime that she was taken captive, yorshin chayav livdosa. His inheritors, right? They inherit this obligation to redeem her. Lo hikir ba'ala. If he didn't know she was taken captive, ein yorshin chayav livdosa. Levi savar. He thought the halacha follows his brisa. Amalei Rav said to him, Haki Amar Chavivi, I think it's Rabbi Chia. Halacha does not follow this brisa. Elakiha, the following brisa is the halacha is in accordance with the Kiyad Desanya. Nishbis la'achar misas bagla, eina yisamun chayivin levdosa. If she was taken captive after her husband's death, you don't have to redeem her. Lo od ela afilu nishvis b'chayev baila va'achar kach meis baila. And her husband, not anything you tell me chayev in lifdosa, they never have to redeem her, even if he knows about it. She'ena ani korba v'vos vinach lila into the whole obligation is we learn out of the words of Kesubos. The words of Kesubos is I can redeem you and bring you back to my wife. I'm dead, so I'm not going to bring you back to my wife. So there's no chiyuv on the Yerush and the Boder. Tanarabana nishvis v'ayim v'achshemen adasar b'dameh. Say he didn't die. But the people that took her captive are asking for a handsome ransom. You like the rhyme over there. A handsome ransom, 10 times her value, or more. Pam Rishona Poda. Sounds like 10 times. What about 100 times? Not clear from the Gemara. Only until 10 times or whatever. Pam Rishona Poda. The first time he has to pay whatever it takes. Mikan ve'elach ratza poda ratza ena poda. From then on, he only has a chiyuv to redeem his wife once. Even if, from Rashi it's mashma, even if they're only asking her value in the shuk, what she'd be sold for, a normal value for a person, he still doesn't have to be podeh. Rishon Galil Omer, Rishon Galil is more mekel, top of them than beis on beis, and mekel for the husband, and macher for the wife. Ein podin as a shvuyin yotzal kedei dmein neitikna olam. This the Gemara says, it's a Gemara in Gittin, where Rishon Galil says when not right, a husband has to redeem his wife. But if someone's not married or a man is taken captive, so the chiyuv falls on the Jewish population. Kal Yisrael. Shmuel says you never ransom someone. Yoshak the man, because otherwise people will just keep on taking people captive. Right? I read my father-in-law's Divrei Torah Friday nights, sometimes Shabbos. My father, what happened? I read this Dvar Torah who was talking about Nachshon Waxman. I don't remember when this happened because I wasn't living in Israel at this point, but apparently it was a very sad story that he was captured by Hamas, I think, and they said they would execute him unless they freed, I don't know, like one of the head of Hamas and maybe like 200 prisoners. And by Friday night at 8 p.m., if they have not freed these prisoners, fortunately, Israel did not. Unfortunately, he died. Israel tried. They weren't going to give 200 terrorists freedom. And how many more deaths would result from that? They tried a covert military operation to rescue Nachshon Waxman. It failed. He ended up dying. So I guess this would be an example. You'll see, right? Even though they weren't asking for money, they were asking for prisoners, right? If you let them free, they'll just keep on taking people captive, and they'll get all these people out of prison, all these terrorists. And they take on all habichdei man, right? According to Shinglil, chdei man podin. If it's a value of the woman, you're podin. Afagav de berkana yosrak suvasa. Even though, right, her redemption, her ransom, is worth more than the ksuba. Her ksuba, 100 zuz or 200 zuz raminu. Of different prices. Tanakam holds exactly like before, right? The first time, even until 10 times. The second time, if he wants to, it's option. It's an option. It's an option. Rishon Galil Omer imayu perkona connect suvasa optional. That's the word. Rishon Galil Omer imayu perkona connect suvasa poda imlave no poda. Shmuel says a different criteria. It says depends if, right, the ransom is more than a ksuva. So which one is it? Is it her value or the ksuba? Shignaliel trey kuli. So my answer: Shignaliel has two kulas, right? Meaning the lower value. Meaning if any of these are met, right, that her ransom is more than her ksuba, or the ransom is more than her value, you don't have to depose her, even the first time. The only time you have to depose her, the only time you have to ransom her is where it's less or equivalent to her value as a person. And secondly, it has to be less than the actual ksuba, because otherwise you could just, give her a ksuba and say, redeem yourself. If she gets an illness, he has to heal her. We're going to learn in the next Mishnah that one of the Tanai Kesubos is that the husband dies, the almana, the widow, gets fed from the inheritors. The Shrika Rafua, if she needs Rafua, Reik Mizonos it. Rafua has a din of Mizonos. Therefore, she gets fed her daily meals from the state. So also her Rafua comes from these like Mizonos. Shrim Lil Omer, Rafua Sheish La Kitzva and Israpa Miksubos. Shein La Kitzva Reik Mizonos. It depends. If it's Ein La Kitzva, there's no end in sight, it's a chronic condition, that's like Mizonos. If it has an end in sight, she has the flu or something like that, that gets negated, taken out from her ksuba, right? She's still owed her ksuba 200 or 100. We're going to see later on in the Masechta if you have the option of just giving her ksuba and telling her earn your own living. It's really not an option. There are some opinions that say you could do that. But anyway, it gets deducted from her ksuba. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Asu Hakaz Dam B'Eretz Yisrael K'Refuah Shein La Kitzva. Apparently, bloodletting in Eretz Yisrael, that's a chronic condition, something you always need. So therefore, it's like mazonos. A relative of Rabbi Yochanan had Isas Abba, an almana, a wife of the father, to have a sricha refuah kol yoma. The Yisomim, the inheritors, they don't want to pay for her medical bills. So she needed it every day. So the Rabbi Yochanan, they said, you have any advice for us? Amalu izlu kotzule midi larofe. Go hire a private doctor and pay the doctor. Let's say pay him $1 million, and he'll be the private doctor. He'll administer medicine for whenever she needs it, right? So therefore, it's changed from something like a chronic condition to a one-time fee, right? And that's like called kitzva. And therefore, they'll get deducted from her ksuba, or they'll give her a ksuba, and they won't have to pay for it. And when he did this, he realized he acted like a lawyer over here. And apparently it's not good to be a lawyer, right? The joke about lawyers and 6 feet under or something like that. Where should the lawyers be? 6 feet under? Should be dead? I don't know. Terrible lawyer, terrible job. What's so bad about being a lawyer? It's a profession. Especially in America, it's a highly respected profession. My father's a lawyer. You're hired to defend your client. Now, even if you know your client, it's obvious the client even tells you that he's guilty, you have to defend him, or he owes someone money, you have to defend him, try to prove him wrong. Now, I don't know. Sounds from the Gemara, Orchei Dayana, it's not a good idea to be a lawyer, because it's like sheker, you're lying, but he's paying you to help him defend him. A different discussion. We'll have a discussion ashkafically at a different time. Mikara Maisavar, a little bit soft Maisavar. Originally, when he gave that advice, he had no compunction. Afterwards, he was felt guilty. Mikara Savar Msarchal Salim. You have to protect your relatives. A little bit soft Savar Adam Chashu Shiny. Yes, you have to protect your relatives, but I'm an important person. I'm a big rabbi. People are going to look at me bad if I look at as a lawyer. So if you're a rabbi, you can't be a lawyer. If you're not a rabbi, you can be a lawyer. Happens to be the rabbi at my parents' shul in West Hempstead is also a lawyer. So he's an Anam Chashav, a rabbi. He can't be a lawyer. He's actually resigning from the shul, and he's only going to be a lawyer, maybe a rabbi emeritus. So I guess the Gemara played out. He can't be both a lawyer and a rabbi. He did manage to do it for 20 years. I don't know if he's in the classification of Adam Chashav. Yochanan was the Gadol Ador. This rabbi is not the Gadol Ador. All right, Mishnah. Lo kasav la b'din dichron the havi lichim ina inon yarsing ksesiv ksuvasech yesar acholku nimachuhun. If he didn't write Again, we mentioned in the last mention of 3 Tnai Ksuba that are part of the Ksuba, whether you write them or not. If you didn't write B'din Dirch Yavu Lichem Minai, right, and the male children I have from me, Inan Yarsan Kesef Ksubas Yersha Chalchun De Machun, right, whatever sons you have with me, they'll get the inheritance more than their other brothers from a second wife. Chayev Shu Tnai Beisin, that is obligatory. It's part of the stipulation of getting married. But not Nukvun. Another thing, my daughters, right? If I have any daughters left over after I die, right, they get mizonos from my estate. They get fed until they get married. You, the almana, right? If I die first, as long as you're a widow, you get fed from my estate. Right? You get to live with my house. That's what Anshe Yerushalayim used to write. Anshe Glil, how you coasting Anshe Yerushalayim? Anshe Gal in the north, they wrote like Anshe Yerushalayim. Anshe Yehuda in the south, how you coasting Anshe Yirto Yoroshin Litin Lachsuvosech. They held no that, like we mentioned before, this possibility the Yoroshin could just pater the Almana, give her a ksuba 100 or 200, and then not be chayav in her mazonos. Afichach imratzu Yoroshin nosin lachsuvaso poshenos. They give her a ksuba and they don't have to pay for mazonos or her fuah she'en la kitzvah. Why do they make this takana, right? What let me explain this, just a little unsure what this means. Basically, a man gets married, right? Now, he gets married to a woman. She brings in a large dowry. She bring in an apartment or something like that, right? Conditional on getting married. The father says, I'll give you my daughter, but I'm giving you an apartment, so you'll marry my daughter. Now, that apartment, they live in that apartment. Eventually the woman dies. They had children. They had sons, let's say. They had Tafka's sons. They had 3 sons, let's say. So, and then the man gets remarried. He marries a second wife. Maybe has children from that. 3 more kids from that. 3 more sons from that. Second wife, right? And then he dies, right? So now the father dies. So who's getting his Yerusha, right? Technically he has 6 sons. 3 from the first marriage, from the second marriage. They're all his sons, so they all split the inheritance equally. However, part of the inheritance that was part of the dowry that one of the wives brought in, the first wife brought in, that apartment, that does not get divided among the 3 sons of the second wife, only among the 3 sons of the first wife. Even though technically with the Raisa, it should go equally to the 6 sons, they made it Takan in the Rabbanan, as long as it's not going to be Oker the Nachla the Raisa, as long as there's other money besides the dowry, besides the Mana Masayim also 100 and 200 that of the first wife goes to the first 3 sons. As long as there's another part of the inheritance that'll be divided equally by the 6 sons, a dinar, shava dinar, that'll be inherited by all the sons equally. So therefore, it wouldn't uproot the idea of a nachla d'oraisa that should be split equally among the 6 sons. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Why do they make this sakana? No, they want people to give a nice dowry to their daughter, right? And fathers be reluctant to give a nice dowry because their daughters might die. They might marry someone else, and that apartment will go to people who are not even his grandkids. It's like they were massacring the daughter, right? His daughter, not exactly his daughter, but his daughter through her sons inherits in front of sons from the second wife, in front of Banim. How could they do that? Hanami the Raisa. This is also in the Raisa. The Chsiv Kun Hashim Ali Banim Ubanos Chula Bnechem Nashim Espenosechem Dunu Al Nashim. This is talking about Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu. Forgot. Why do I always have these? I get confused sometimes. Yirmiyahu. It's hard when you're saying a shir, so you get. Sefer Yirmiyahu, I think it is. Chunashim Ali Banim Ubanos, marry women, and have sons for your and daughters, and take for your sons wives, and your daughters give to men. Bishlam Abanim B'Yidei Kaima, right? Who's in charge of finding a soulmate? The man goes after the woman. The Gemara says in Kedusha, so the father can help him with that. Alabante Mi Kaiman B'Yidei, right? The men go after the woman. How does a father help his daughter get married? No, you give her nice clothes. You give her nice linens. You give her a nice dowry. Right? You give her something. People are only going to give that dowry if it remains with their grandkids. Bad comma. How much should a person give as a dowry? Up until 1/10 of your property, you should give as a dowry. Say that the father should inherit, the husband should inherit. Imkain, meaning the Baal is the Ksuva, the Mano Masayim, right? Also, that's part of Ksuvas being different that the sons get of the first marriage and not the second one. So Imkain Ab Nami Mimna Velo Kasav. If the Baal is also not willing to give his Ksuba, the 100 Mano Masayim, so then the father also won't give a dowry. Let's say the father is not giving a dowry, so then there should be no Ksuvas being different from the Mano Masayim. Lo Polag Rabban. Rabban made a takana no matter what, whether he gives or not. Bas ben abonim nami teirus. Let's say, however, if right for the first marriage he only has daughters, he doesn't have sons, and there is no ksus benin different, only the sons, zacharim benin different zacharim. Bas ben abonim nami teirus. If you only have daughters in the first marriage, she should get the inheritance. Kanachla should be rabbanim. They made it takana, but it had to resemble a nachla. Bas ben abonos teirus. So let's say from the first marriage he has daughters, and the second marriage he also only has daughters. Lo speak ksuas banot different, banot nukvin. Lo plug rabbanon. Rabbanon didn't make distinctions in the takana. But take metaltale. They should be gova. These sons should be gova from not only from real estate, but also from movable objects. Ksuva should be rabbanon. They made like ksuva. It's part of the ksuva. Ksuva you only collect from real estate. Tishrov mishabdi should collect from people that bought property from you, meaning if a should have a lien on the property, Yarsan tonight. It says they wrote it tonight. It says in the Mishnah Yarsan, Yerusha you don't get from Mishubadim. Ema afa gav the lake on Moser dinar. Say it even applies when there's not an extra dinar left over, which is inherited evenly by the 6 sons. Makom the kami akran achla del raisa l'takin rabbanan. The rabbanan were going to second something that was completely eradicate a din del raisa, because then people would forget about the din del raisa in the Torah that nachla goes to the sons. Equally, so therefore there had to be some nachla that was distributed evenly, and the rest could be part of Kesubos being different. That will be the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion. We talk more about the chiyuv mizonos of Refuah. To heal his wife. The Gemara makes a distinction whether this kitzvah was a chronic condition or ein kitzvah, a chronic condition, or the kitzvah it's a non-chronic condition. Why the distinction coming up next?